My name is Dr. Irons, one of the few female advisors and only leading staff for Site B09. In my possession is a journal obtained from the redacted audio incident in Northeast Africa, which occurred on redacted audio of last year. The incident since then been covered up as a terrorist attack and will be for the foreseeable future. Have continuous observation as redacted audio. Have deemed it as a dawn level priority. Today, I've been given clearance from redacted audio to read the contents of the journal for the first time since its recovery. Now, to start the review and contents of the journal, with it, I hope to obtain further detailed information on what really happened. Narration of journal contents begins. I don't know where to begin. Jesus. I don't even know why I'm writing in a journal right now. I suppose it's to cope with the situation of it all. So, I'll start from the beginning. Luckily, I brought a pen to write this all down. Otherwise, well, anyways. My name is Redacted Audio Manning, working for the Redacted Audio Institute of Redacted Audio University, where our small research team of 8 members finally received an opportunity to study the pyramids of Giza. At least the contents of what was accessible for foreigners anyways. The trip over was long and tiresome, but the team was excited with the chance that we had just gotten. It would be the first time I would participate in such a study, and it would help advance my career in the long run. The first night we spent in the hotel and in the city, taking in the sights, mostly to breathe in the atmosphere before we get serious about our research. Soon enough, morning came. And when we all packed the necessary gear and equipment, we headed for the pyramids of Giza. Security was tight and was expected for a large structure holding secrets deep within. Anyways, once we were checked out and given the okay by security, we made our way inside with a guide to ensure we wouldn't get lost. It was certainly breathtaking. Beautiful, to say the least. Our team started looking at the walls and taking photos. It all went smoothly, and nothing happened. I walked a little separately so I could sightsee alone. Curiously, I had walked over to a forbidden section of the pyramid. The one that is still inaccessible, or at least was at the time. I looked at the walls of the chamber and looked at the images. Curious and mysterious as I recall, however, the lighting inside was bad, so I couldn't see everything. Though, an image stuck out to me. It looked like a rather odd depiction of the former civilization bringing in their dead pharaohs. I continued to look and noticed one of the images had a bump to it. Sadly, the ignorance of my then childlike mind touched it. The image pressed forward and locked itself in place. What the hell? Is all I could say. And I started hearing a small rumble, and suddenly dust started filling the room. I ran out thinking it was poisonous substance. The guide and my fellow team members quickly ran to where I was, curious of the shaking. Everyone, excluding the guide, appeared to have wondered what had just happened. I looked over at the guide and only saw the glimpse of fear in his face. Seems he was one of the superstitious types as well. We later found out why, for good reason too. Suddenly, the foundation of the chamber started shaking, and large stones started closing off certain entrances and our only exit. There was a panic, as we knew we were now trapped inside. Those outside the entrance could hear our muffled cries for help, but they couldn't do anything at the time. Eventually, after some time, they had brought in demolitions team to place charges on the large stone blocking our only way out. Shock and fear are all that consumed us. When the charges didn't work, But what did work was peeling off some of the stone from the real material embedded within. It was an unknown metallic substance. It couldn't be breached. No further charges were placed in fear of tumbling down the entire pyramid on top of us. So we were stuck, without any hope of getting out. Though the people outside made attempts to reassure us, but we all knew the truth. We'd probably never get out. At least, not alive. For nearly 4 hours, which felt like an eternity, we were stuck in the darkness. The only light source came from the flashlights and lamps we brought with us, but those were running on limited time. I sat isolated near a corner, reflecting on what I'd just done. I killed us all. It didn't help that some of my colleagues made sure to remind me of that. I grew tired of it all and finally said, "Forget this." So I stood up, deciding what could be worse than dying inside the place or exploring the hidden chamber I had opened. I walked. A few of my colleagues noticed and asked where I was going. Simply put, I told them, exploring. That I'd rather die seeing what lay hidden within, rather than dying with questions. I took the first step deep into the unknown. It wasn't a surprise that it led downstairs. We walked for a while. It only seemed to drag on. It's then we heard it. Among our footsteps and heavy breathing, we heard the indistinguishable sound of the entrance closing. The hard drop echoed from where we were at. Our chances of death seemed slim then. Our life expectancy had just shortened, shedding any hope that we've had left. Regardless, we carried on, continuing down the long hallway. Down for some time, we could hear our guide mutter God knows what. Probably a prayer, but it grew tiresome. Then the light started. Through our flashlights, we all knew the walls were blank, but once we had reached a certain point, it all started emitting a pattern. One we didn't know was there. It lit up down the path like blue neon, taking us to what I presumed to be the end of the hallway and into whatever lay ahead. Some of us seemed optimistic and curious. I, for one, started considering that those conspiracy theorists were right all along. Eventually, we arrived at a large open complex, lit up by the same neon lights. It looked fantastic, like something out of a science fiction book or movie. But much like those movies and novels, we were ignorant towards the unknown. One of us took a step forward, and the floor began to shake. It shifted and morphed around us. A small flat pedestal appeared from beneath us. It was floating. No, hovering, I guess would be the best way of putting it. Jesus. Those crazy conspiracy theorists were right. Is what one of my more fanatic colleagues had said out loud. I basically felt the same. What the hell had we just stumbled upon? We stood there for a while contemplating our findings and didn't know what to do with the pedestal. It was then we came together like the scholars we were discussing our options. We all concluded that the pedestal would perhaps offer us some means of escape, or hoped it would have at least offered it. But despite our combined thoughts on the matter, we hesitated to touch the thing. Luckily, someone did. A female colleague of ours pressed her hands against the pedestal. It did something, or triggered something. I don't know. The moment she touched it, a blue light of electrical pulse emitted from it, spreading throughout the room and lighting up. We could see clearer now. The entire room seemed alien. The floor, walls, and ceiling looked to be marble or a deviation of it. Our amazement never ceased. It helped keep our hope alive, for what it was worth. Then, The marble floor shook again. This time, it revealed several new passages leading to God knows what. Inevitably, we decided to split up. All except the guide, who didn't want anything to do with us. The guide said he'd wait at the main room, and off we went, splitting into different pairs, exploring the deep corridors. A mistake, to be sure. One that I regret now. I regret now. I didn't know what the others had found in their corridors, but we found hell. Dr. Irons takes over again. Sorry for the interruption. Some of what he wrote started to become unclear. Running it through our decipher program, there I can read the rest of it via my computer. Dr. Iron then resumes the narration once again. We found hell. Within the corridor we entered were containment glass. There was something inside the glass, but whatever liquid was inside was now dirty, and we couldn't see it. I approached it, attempting to get a glimpse of whatever was inside, much to the dismay of my colleague. Something had hit the glass. In that moment, we went into a full panic, falling on my back. My colleague helped me back up and asked what the hell it was. I didn't know what it was, but only that it was there for a reason, or for an unknown purpose. We didn't want to stick around and find out. Like idiots, we chose to continue along instead of turning back. And we should have. Soon enough, we walked further and further in. We started seeing similar containment areas with the same, what I presumed to be a creature of sorts. Then, it started, the headaches. God, the headaches. But nothing like I've ever felt before. It scratched deep within my mind, violating it, and I noticed my colleague feeling the same way. Then it began. Whispers. The whispers, which were never ending. But the thing is, it didn't come from the structure. The whispers were coming from within our minds, like something or someone was whispering in our ears. It went on and on and on without pause. I was nearly driving myself insane. I don't know what the whispers meant or were saying. I didn't care. All I knew was that it wasn't good. So we turned back. My colleague walked ahead of me, but she stopped. She looked down at her hands, and out of concern, I asked her, "Are you okay?" She turned to face me. There was blood dripping from her nose. It wasn't a nosebleed, but likely a result of whatever was affecting our minds. I started noticing it too, not because I decided to check my own nose. No, she pointed it to my face. I hadn't even realized it, but I was bleeding too. I should have realized it then, what was happening to us, but I realized it too late. We walked back, hopefully to escape the torment. It was on the way back, I swear I heard redacted audio, muttering to herself. But it wasn't English nor Arabic. It was something else entirely. I electively ignored her mutters out of fear and to blindly ignore whatever else was happening. The intensity of the headaches increased. The whispers grew louder and louder with every step, until I too started to mutter at arbitrary times. What I was saying I didn't know, but subconsciously it's like I had known what I was saying at the time. It didn't take us long before we heard it. The indescribable voice deep inside deep inside our minds. Free us. Free us. Eventually, my colleague stopped, and I didn't know what happened to her, but she soon turned to face me. Something had to change. Her eyes were unmistakably yellow or gold. I don't know. She no longer seemed present, but I noticed yellow-like veins spreading throughout her face and body. Like one of those vein spreads in a horror movie. that are depicted as black or dark green. It was to my horror that she spoke to me, but it wasn't her. It was something communicating through her. Do you hear it? I didn't stick around to listen to the rest of what she had to say. Instead, I ran and ran. This time, however, the whispers turned into a deep, ominous voice, shaking my surroundings, or rather, my vision. Soon enough, I had arrived at the original room we had split from. The sight only made me feel worse. There was blood everywhere. My other colleagues were laying on the ground dead, with bullet holes in their heads. At the time, fear and panic had taken over, so much so that I didn't realize our former guide stood behind me, aiming a gun to my head. "What are you doing?" is what I had asked him. He didn't respond, only saying that he couldn't let me live. A voice had spoken to him as well, but it didn't appear to be like the one that had been itching in our minds. I attempted to plead with him, crying in the process, but all he said was, "I mustn't let it escape." Through impeccable timing, I saw redacted audio approaching from behind. She snapped the guide's neck, and I saw his lifeless body drop. Then she looked at me. "They're calling to us. Don't you hear them? It's so beautiful. God, please forgive me for what I did next." At that instance, I hadn't noticed, but the room was glowing neon red, and the ceiling above us showed us a sight I'll never forget. A planet, but not ours. Theirs. I stood paralyzed by what I was seeing. It was a glimpse of the horrors of an impending arrival. I hadn't noticed her walk past me, making her way towards the pedestal until it was almost too late. My former colleague stood near the pedestal, and it changed function. I don't know what came over me, but I knew I had to do something. So I ran and quickly picked up the handgun from before and aimed it at her. I apologized to her before taking the shot. She fell instantly, but not taking any chances, I fired one last round into her skull. It was over. But I could still feel the voice growing stronger inside of me. I don't know how or why, but it hadn't taken complete control of me, similar to the former guide. Out of some subconscious instinct, I walked over to the pedestal and touched it. The room returned to its neon blue. However, this time, I noticed writing on the pedestal. It was a screen the entire time. We just hadn't realized until now, even when my other female colleague had touched it the first time. Although I couldn't read it, there was a certain part of the screen that seemed familiar to that of a termination button. I knew then what I had to do. I knew whatever was down here could never see the light of day. I touched it without hesitation, and soon the entire foundation started to shake. I don't know if it worked, but as I write this, the ground below me has started to crumble. My job is done. I still have the handgun. It seems to have 3 more rounds in it. I guess this is it. This is goodbye. Narration ends, and there is a bit of silence. There was blood on the final page. Redacted audio had written on. It is clear now that he had to end his own life. The information provided in this journal has become very informative. Now we can confirm our suspicion on what lies beneath the former pyramids of Giza. I'm sorry, but I think I need to take a break. I've got a bit of a headache right now. I'll finish my detailed recording and report later when I've had some rest. We are salvation.
our rise